The Biden administration is weighing Iran's response to a European Union proposal aimed at reviving that 2015 international nuclear agreement. Central to Iran's response, the Iranian negotiating team said, are assurances it seeks that Western companies investing in Iran would be protected if the U.S. withdrew at a later date. Here to weigh in on all of it is foreign policy expert and media analyst Dr. Walid Phares. Walid, thank you for being here. In negotiating this nuke deal, Iran has floated mechanisms in the agreement that would allow Tehran to quickly increase its nuclear work if Washington again quit the deal. An advisor to Iran's negotiating team told the BBC, quote, "What is important for Iran is that there are assurances that if the United States suddenly leaves the deal again, it comes at a price." What do you make of the constant push by the EU and this administration to revive a deal originally made in 2015, as well as Iran's response to the EU proposal?
Well, Raymond, going back to 2015, originally the Iran deal under the Obama administration was designed to serve two interests. One is the Iran regime interests, which is basically to receive incredible amounts of cash, the $150 billion plus billions here and billions there when the valve was open. And also the interest of those who will have business with the Iran regime. That's many, many European companies. And we are learning now that there are American companies also who have been pushing and lobbying for the Iran deal because it's in their interest, because the Iranian regime promised them a lot of advantages. So unfortunately, the Obama deal cost the United States a lot of concerns and actually losses in terms of our national security. The Iranian regime now, at this point in time, is trying to play with the Biden administration, trying to tell them, look, if you do not come and sign and accept my conditions, I'm going to escalate my conditions myself. So the Biden administration should understand this is an Iranian tactic to force them to come and sign and continue what Obama has started.
Yeah. Russia and China are also part of this deal, it should be noted. The new president of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, is known as a hardline cleric. He was just sworn in last August. He succeeded Rouhani. Now, given the current tense relationships between the U.S., Russia, the U.S. and China, and a hardline president in Iran, why would the U.S. even pursue a deal with Iran at this point?
Absolutely. I mean, you just answered the question. The Iran regime has actually a strategic deal agreement signed with China last year, in which China has committed to Iran to buy all the gas and oil that Iran can offer, even despite our sanctions on Iran. So the Iranians are already breaching the deal that they are asking us to sign. Same thing, Iran is selling material to Russia. Russia is selling weapons to Iran. So you're perfectly right. This is a trio of Russia, China, and Iran who are now basically trying to control Asia. And through Asia, come to Africa and to Latin America. I don't understand why the Biden administration insists, except one thing, is that the Iran lobby has been able to exert a lot of influence inside this administration. That's the only explanation.
Well, and you have the holdovers from the Obama administration that created this deal the first time around, and they're all back in power again. So this is just continuing the Obama legacy. I mean, that's part of it. Last week, the U.S. Justice Department announced a plot by Iran to murder former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton. Listen.
Today, the Department of Justice unsealed a complaint exposing a brazen attempt by a member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to carry out the murder of a former U.S. National Security Advisor. We face a rising threat from authoritarian regimes who seek to reach beyond their own borders to commit acts of repression, including inside the United States. This is an especially appalling example of the government of Iran perpetrating egregious acts of transnational violence in violation of U.S. laws and our national sovereignty.
And Walid, they didn't even mention the Salman Rushdie stabbing this week. Why would we even consider a deal with a regime like this that continues to export terror all over the world and in our own country?
Absolutely, Raymond. I mean, the threat against John Bolton, the former national security advisor, is just a piece, fortunately, that never happened. And I hope other attempts by the Iranians will also fail. But I take you back to 2018, in July of 2018, when a large number of U.S. politicians, members of Congress, former members, senators, former senators, top experts, I think Mr. Bolton was there, Newt Gingrich was there. Guess what? I was there. That rally was targeted by the Iranian intelligence for obliteration. That would have been not just one American official or ex-official. That would have been dozens. So the Iranian regime is dead set on causing harm to America and to Americans. And in addition to that, there have been a lot of assassination attempts across the Middle East against leaders, journalists, intellectuals. In addition to the fact that the Iranian militias are roaming in Iraq, killing young people in Kurdistan, in Syria, and through Hezbollah. We know how many assassination attempts have been, and real assassinations have been successful, unfortunately. And I could count for the whole hour. Iran is on the terror offensive. So your question is so valid. Why are we determined? Why are we relentless in trying to go back and give Iran what it wants? More money to buy more weapons, to fund more militias in the region. There is no logic to this.
Since the 2015 agreement, incidentally, Iran has gone back to enriching uranium, has purified some of its new stockpile to a level of 60%, close to the 90% enrichment used to produce nuclear weapons. Can they be trusted? And more importantly, what does the U.S. and the EU stand to gain, if anything, from a deal, Walid?
The reason for why the Iran regime cannot be trusted, objective reasons, put all the subjective reasons on the side, is that a regime that commits to stop the build-up of a strategic weaponry system, a strategic nuclear weaponry system, will not be buying and developing and deploying and testing and using ballistic missiles. What would you use the ballistic missiles for? Throw roses? You don't. The only use for ballistic missiles is what are weapons of mass destruction, including the nuclear. Second, the Iranian regime is buying anti-aircraft missiles, is improving its offensive capabilities in the Navy. They have their militias as far as Yemen and Lebanon and Syria. So all indicates that the money they got already from the previous billions of dollars released by the Obama administration has been used not to help the middle class and the poor people inside Iran, but to buy weapons and to equip themselves and equip these militias, and they are on the offensive. So now try to convince me or anybody who know this information that Iran has the intention of never having a nuclear bomb. Besides, last point, Raymond, here, it is not said that the only path to a nuclear weapon is the enrichment of uranium. They want us to think that this is the only one and there are 50%, 60%, and down and up. What they can do with that money is buy a dozen tactical nukes. That's all they need to put the region under their own terror.
Yeah. Well, look, moving on to another disaster in the Middle East. It's been a year since the Biden administration withdrew U.S. troops from Afghanistan. Now, since then, the Taliban has taken over the entire country. Human rights abuses abound. Girls no longer go to school. International aid has evaporated. And U.S. sanctions that froze some $7 billion of Afghan foreign reserves has sent their economy into a tailspin. The United Nations has estimated that as many as 97%, or as much as 97% of the country may fall below the poverty line by the second half of the year. How big a mistake was it to leave Afghanistan the way we did? And what, if anything, can be done there now?
That was the mother of all mistakes. I mean, at least with the Iran deal, we are in a middle way. We can save ourselves and save the Iranian people and our allies in the region, Israel and the Arab moderates, and the Lebanese and the Syrians and others. But with the Taliban disaster of last year, what happened is that the Taliban, they don't care about the quality of life of the Afghan people. They don't care about the freedom. They don't care about their image. Actually, anywhere around the world. What they care about is to establish the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan, which will be the launching pad or the relaunching pad for the caliphate that Al-Qaeda and now ISIS and now the Haqqani network and all the other neo-jihadist groups that are now reinstalled in Afghanistan. I mean, one of the commitments that the administration said, oh, we got from the Taliban is they're not going to allow international terrorists or jihadists to reorganize in Afghanistan. Guess what? 1 month, 1 month after our withdrawal, Al-Qaeda was crossing the borders from Pakistan into Afghanistan, from Iran into Afghanistan. It was on Al Jazeera. It was on Al Arabiya. It was on all Arab TV. So it's not the fact that we had to wait to kill the most recent commander of Al-Qaeda, Zawahiri, to know and learn. Oh, my goodness, they hosted him. Right. They have been hosting all these international jihadists for a year now.
This past weekend, an electrical fire broke out in a church, in a Coptic Orthodox church, rather, in central Cairo. It killed 41 worshipers, 18 of them children. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi ordered the army to renovate the building immediately, and by Monday evening, the exterior of the church looked like it was newly built. What's been the reaction on the ground to this fire, Walid?
Well, you and I have spoken about the Copts. You have spoken at their conferences for so many years. Yep. We have many friends. We feel very bad about what happened. This was a very bad moment to be seen on TV, or you know, we have our friends who have families there. The Coptic community has been going through a very tragic part of history. We know it. Persecution, attacks by the jihadists, beheading in Libya, Muslim Brotherhood persecuting them as well when they were in power in 2012, 2013. Fortunately, the Egyptian people rose in 2013. And then with the help of the army, so it was not a coup, it was a rise of the population, they got rid of the Brotherhood. And of course, the jihadists continue to target the Copts. Why? Because it's the weakest segment of society. So now with all these disasters, one would hope that the Egyptian government, and what you've announced is part of it, are going to come and then collectively help the Coptic community together.
Yeah. Well, the Patriarch of Egypt's 10 million Coptic Orthodox Christians, Pope Tadros, vented his frustration on Tuesday that, look, this is the largest Christian community in the Middle East. It's been squeezed by decades of government regulations restricting the number and the size of churches. He called on the authorities to either move the 12,000 square foot church to a larger space or allow it to expand to accommodate the large number of Christians in the neighborhood. How do you think the Patriarch's criticism will be received by the Sisi government?
Look, I know the Patriarch. I went to Egypt twice. I met him, met his deputy. He's clairvoyant. He is very good leader for his community. But what is very important is that he and his church marched hand in hand with the Muslim, hierarchy when the population rose against the Brotherhood. The army then, the commander of the army, General Sisi at the time, was supported by the Copts. And he knows it. That's why his reaction now, while Egypt is facing a lot of economic trouble, is to help this community. And yeah, I would agree. I mean, if I was an Egyptian, I would ask the President Sisi, to help in every way he can this community, because it reflects upon Egypt. This community, their voice of Copts around the world with the other churches, with the Vatican, with the evangelical community is very important. So I think it's in the interest of the current government of Egypt to do everything they can to help the Egyptian Coptic community.
Well, and that Copt community has its roots in the ancient Egyptian. These are the ancient people of Egypt. That's who they are. They trace their roots right back to those ancient Egyptians. So it's important to keep that community alive. It is part of their identity. Walid Phares, thank you so much for being here. You can follow Dr. Phares on Twitter at Walid Phares. Thank you.
Thank you very much.